And now it's time for the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview with Tyler Henry and Devin Hanney.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in for another installment of the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. Tyler Henry joined here by Devin Hanney. It's brought to you by Kansas Wesleyan University. And Devin, we are at the midway point, coming up on week number 4. You know, we talked about the first couple of weeks, teams separating themselves, the good from the bad, the great from the elite, but we're really kind of getting to the point where you're starting to look ahead to district play and even playoff seedings. Things are really going to ramp up as we get into the meat of the season here.
It happens so quickly, right? Every year it's just kind of like we spend so much time and energy getting ready and gauging who might be those teams through the first couple of weeks. Then all of a sudden week 3 is sped by. As you said, district play now starting for a lot of area teams as they start to gauge their way through where they might be in a bracket and where they might fall in their district, trying to jockey for playoff position. It happens so quickly. And boy, I don't know, Tyler. I think when we look back at week number 3, I think maybe the star of the weekend in week 3 was the weather.
Yeah, it really was, and it played an impact on games all across the state of Kansas. It was interesting. You had everything from cancellations and games that are going to be made up next week to a couple of games where there was nothing coming down from the sky. It was just nice, cool weather. That was what we had for the most part in Minneapolis. But let's go ahead and get into the games from last week. We still have 3 undefeated teams left in our area. Salina Central wrecked campus 62-13. They had a 50-point lead at halftime of that game. Speaking of 50 burgers, southeast of Saline shuts out Beloit in a 50-0 shutout win, and Ellsworth rolled Minneapolis on our game of the week, 47-14, another game that started competitive, and then the Bearcats really turned it on in the second half. Other winners in our area, it was actually a good week for our area across the board. El Saline wrapped up their business with Norwich before halftime. They got a 54-0 victory before the end of the second quarter. Sacred Heart picked up their first victory over Pleasanton, 29-7, in a rare Saturday installment of Friday Night Lights. And then Abilene, how about the Cowboys? They rattled off 3 unanswered scores to come back and beat Concordia 27-23. That feels like it could be a turning point for the Cowboys.
3 touchdowns in the final 7 minutes. They win 27-23, as you said. Tegan Funston, the quarterback, he's kind of a Swiss Army knife, honestly, for this Cowboys team, playing quarterback right now because he's the best candidate for the job, honestly. 12-yard touchdown run with 31 seconds left for the Cowboys to pull that defeat out and save it for a victory on their home field last Friday night. That's a big win in the NCKL.
Salina South continues to show improvement, but they unfortunately fell to Derby 57-21. Boy, speaking of comebacks, you just feel sick for the Chapman Irish. Back-to-back weeks, they do all the hard work. They come all the way back and just could not quite finish it off. 21-20 is the final against Riley County, but that's a Chapman team that could be really frisky down the stretch.
This Irish team, they're figuring it out as the game goes on, and they're having hopefully some confidence come about the way that they have seen themselves being capable of playing. They just need better starts. That's 2 games now out of the first 3 weeks that they should have been in the game early on and maybe even been in the driver's seat. They just don't have great starts. They have great finishes. If you want to get your money's worth on Friday night, go watch the second half of a Chapman game. I guarantee you're going to get it. Just a better start, and I think the Irish would be in a much different seat right now.
Rounding out scores from our area, Bennington falls to Marion 60-6. Solomon falls to Frankfort 46-0. Key takeaways from week number 3. Central is taking care of business. The games that they won close last year, they're dominating. The games that they lost last year, all of a sudden they're flipping that to wins. I know that they were expected to win their first 3 games, but this Central team looks like it's a little bit different this year.
It's different to be expected to win your first 3 games and win your first 3 games, right? 35 points in the first quarter for the Mustangs last Friday night, 20 in the second quarter. They led 55-7 at halftime. Griffin Hall, his first 3 possessions, 3 touchdown passes. Also, Cooper Reeves, can't say enough about him. The receiving corps showed up. But we need to start talking about this Mustang defense because they're doing very well. Just their first half alone last Friday night, they had 4 turnovers they took away from campus. That really led to this blowout happening in the first 2 quarters.
Well, and we also need to mention that in the state of Kansas, all classes, all considered for, we've got 2 of the top 5 rushers in the state. Cooper Reeves at Salina Central, who you mentioned a moment ago, and Tucker Goss, who, boy, looked at his numbers through the first 2 weeks and says, oh, that's cute. I'm going to go run for 250 plus and 4 touchdowns on Minneapolis. And that's not even including Grady Gebhardt, who you and I have kind of joked about. Boy, if he played 4 quarters instead of just the first half, guarantee you he would be on that list.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at Grady Gebhardt, and he only played 2 quarters in week number 1. He played 3 quarters in week number 2, played 3 quarters in week number 3. His numbers the other night for Southeast of Saline were mind-boggling. He put 183 on the board and a touchdown rushing the football. He also put up 149 and 3 touchdowns catching the football. He had a total of 332 yards of total offense for Southeast.
I want to just quickly give you the number because one thing we love about Coach Gephardt, he always puts everything into the stat books. But yeah, Grady Gephardt, I mean, his numbers on the year have been absolutely insane and off the charts. And we'll be kind of tracking that throughout the course of the season. Let's go ahead and get into some matchups here for week number 4. You've got Sacred Heart taking on Valley Heights. That's a game that is going to be tough for the Knights. We'll talk more about the matchup a little bit later on, but Valley Heights likely going to be the team that comes away and gets the victory in that district. You've also got Salina Central looking to prove it again against a Goddard Eisenhower team that they've struggled with the last few years, but Eisenhower's not off to the same start. They're 1-2 coming into this game. This is a great chance for Central to prove that they have separated themselves and moved to 4-0. Salina South, boy, it does not get any easier. You go from Derby to Hutch. Hutch lost last week, but it came against a Mays team that made a very deep run in the 5A playoffs. Our game of the week that we'll talk about more later, we'll see Abilene at 2-1 taking on a Rock Creek team that looks like one of the best teams in the state in Class 3A. Chapman doesn't get any easier for them either. They are 0-3. They will travel to Clay Center to take on the 2-1 Tigers. NCKL action continues to be tough on Chapman. Southeast of Saline, undefeated. They will host Kingman. Kingman typically, historically, has been a big challenge for SES, but they enter winless at 0-3. And then you've got Ellsworth in a game that they should win. It's 3-0 Ellsworth against 0-3 Lions. Final matchups from around the area. Minneapolis at 1-2, a great chance to bounce back against a winless Norton team. Bennington with a chance to potentially get their first victory as they take on, how about this, a 2-1 Republic County team that is currently top of the district, as well as Valley Heights. And then in 8-man, we've got El Saline at 2-1 taking on 2-1 Canton Galva, and 1-2 Solomon taking on 2-1 Central Plains.
Yeah, a lot of great matchups. The Kingman Southeast of Saline game, I think that's one that you don't look past this week. It's not that I expect Southeast to lose that game, but Kingman comes in 0-3. Their schedule early on has been very, very, very tough. Also, they have most of their skill players back from last year. They'll come in and they'll be a football team. They will not lay down at all. And as you said, the Central team, I can't help but to think about the Mustangs and what they are trying to accomplish this year. You're at 3-0. You beat Goddard Eisenhower tonight. That puts you at 4-0. And all of a sudden, you're starting to creep into the elite teams in Class 5A this year. As we enter tonight, Tyler, there are only 8 undefeated teams in the state of Kansas in Class 5A, including Salina Central. You win again tonight, and you're 4-0 all of a sudden halfway through the regular season. I think people start talking about the Mustangs a lot more.
And that's an Eisenhower team that smoked Central a year ago. 51-25 was the final in that one. You come out and you win that game, and you defend your turf. That is a great start to the Central season. We will go ahead and step away, but when we come back, we'll hear from both head coaches for our game of the week. It'll feature Abilene and Rock Creek. So excerpts of our conversation with head coaches Brad Nix and Shane Sieben are right around the corner. We will be back with more of your Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show when we return. It's presented by Kansas Wesleyan.
And now back to the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview.
We are back here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show, helping get you ready for our Salina Regional Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Game of the Week. It's brought to you this week by Abilene Termite and Pest Control, and it will see the Abilene Cowboys at home looking to pull off a big upset against the Rock Creek Mustangs. Earlier this week, we had a chance to sit down with both head coaches in this matchup. We begin with an excerpt of our conversation with Rock Creek head coach Shane Sieben. I know that you guys have had a chance to kind of get acclimated, but still the new kids on the block in the NCKL, how enjoyable is it to be in a league like that where you know that, pretty much regardless of who you play, you're going to be in for a dogfight every week?
Yeah, I don't know how enjoyable that part is. Yeah, it's a week in and week out. It's a dogfight, and all the coaches in the league do a great job. And it's just you get such a wide gamut of offenses, and from the flex bone of Clay Center in Marysville to spread, power, and counter from Wamego, and we'll see very similar stuff this week from Abilene, and using some 2 tight end formations and some power run game and quarterback run game as well. So you see the wide gamut, and Concordia is more spread this year too. So you see a little bit of everything. Chapman, you get the power eye and a lot of double dive and option game too. So it's tough. It's like going from a service academy to spread offense. It's something different every week, and it keeps you on your toes. And I don't know how much fun that is, but it's good for our kids, and we enjoy the league, and it's been good for us.
Well, you got another big league matchup coming up here tonight. You guys will take on the Abilene Cowboys. When you have a chance to watch them on film, what are the things that stand out to you about the way the Cowboys play?
Physicality in the run game here. They've done a good job with that this year, and really like the Oakland kids. They're both very physical, and both of the tight ends, and really they've had three that they've played that are all really good and do a good job in the run game. And the athleticism of Funston really pop on film, and they've got some receivers that can hurt you too. So those are all things from an offensive standpoint that catch your eye. And then defensively, Coach Nix has done a great job. I was at Manhattan when we faced him when he was at Shawnee Heights, and they're very disciplined in what they do defensively, and they're not. You're going to have to execute. You're not really going to be able to out scheme them. They're going to be in the right place, and they're always tough to go against. So they're very well coached and very disciplined team, and we're going to have to play really well.
Offensively, a lot of what the Cowboys want to do revolves around Tegan Funston. He can rip it, he can run it. I know you faced a lot of guys like him before, but how do you limit the impact of a dual threat player like Tegan?
Yeah, very, very similar as far as a dual threat to Wamigo's kid. Logan Fulton's kind of similar way. He's just a more physical runner. Funston's a little quicker, but I think number one, you got to do a good job of keeping him in the pocket. You can't let him get outside of the pocket and have the threat of run pass. And I think the other thing is you've got to really take away the run and make them one dimensional. If they can get the running game going, then play action can really hurt you. So for us, we're going to have to be really good against the run game, and we're going to have to try and keep him in the pocket.
I know you mentioned their ability to stop the run, but defensively, where do you feel like you see Abilene's strengths, and what do you need to make sure you do to move the ball effectively this week?
The two DNs are really good. Both of them, I think it's 3 and 35. Hopeman, and they're both really good against the run, and that front four is tough. And those corners I think I saw a stat they had 11 interceptions last year between Funston and Evans. So I think those are kind of the keys right there. They got some playmakers at key positions, and we're going to have to win the battle line of scrimmage. We're going to have to be able to create some of the run game and get the ball going downhill at them. And then if we can get them coming downhill, and then you can take advantage of some things. But they're tough, and they do a good job on the edge.
Well, and last thing for you here, Coach, I know we've talked a little offense, we've talked a little defense, but overall, if you boil it down to kind of the top few points, what would you say are your biggest keys to the game to pick up a win on the road and move to 4-0?
As always, got to win the turnover battle. We've got to be able to run the football and stop the run. If we can do those things, we feel like we're going to have a shot.
We also had a chance to visit with Brad Nix, the head coach of the Abilene Cowboys, and get his thoughts on this big upcoming Week 4 contest. You got a big game coming up here against Rock Creek, trying to defend your home field against a ranked opponent in the state. A lot of people see Rock Creek as a favorite to maybe win the NCKL this year. How much do you relish an opportunity like this to, maybe come out and shock some people around the state in a game that a lot of people see you as underdogs in?
Yeah, I definitely would probably say everybody, puts us as an underdog, which is fine. I love the underdog role, and Rock Creek is a great team, and I didn't realize whether they're ranked or not, but when they beat Wamego and the way they beat Wamego, I think opened some eyes, and so they're a great team, and we're going to have to be at our best, and we're going to have to play hard, for 4 quarters, and it's one of those moments where we just kind of come together as a team. I know. It's not going to be our Super Bowl. It's an important game. We want to win it. And regardless of what happens, it's going to be the type of game that's going to help us, weeks 9, 10, 11, 12, be able to try to make a playoff run. And because they're a definite playoff caliber of a team. And so when you play those guys in the regular season, it helps you in the end.
When you have a chance to scout Rock Creek on film, what are the things that kind of stand out to you most about just the way that they play on both sides of the ball?
Just how physical they are. They're really physical up front. They bring back, I think, 6 of 7 from a defensive front that I think only allowed 1 rushing touchdown last year. And so they bring back a lot of guys from there, and they're physical. They like to get after you and go, and but they're physical on both sides of the ball. They've got a new quarterback this year, but I think he's smart and witty, and he throws a good ball, and they've got a new running back this year, and he runs the ball really well. we're going to have to be very disciplined. We can't make mistakes against them because they're the type of team that will really make you pay for those mistakes. And so we've got to play kind of mistake-free football and play Cowboy football and get after them.
Well, and you mentioned some of those offensive pieces. Offensively, this is a Rock Creek team that's put up 140 points in 3 weeks. How have you kind of seen them do that, and how do you slow an attack like that down this week?
Yeah, I think it's just not giving them the big play. I think if you go back and you look at their average passing touchdown, and how far that is, it's a big number. Same thing for rushing. It's making them earn it. Bend don't break on defense, and making them put together a 12, 13, 14 play drive. And if they beat you, then they beat you. But don't give them those 2, 3, 4, 5 play drives where they hit a big play on you. And so again, that goes back to us just being disciplined and playing Cowboy football.
On the flip side, 2 shutouts already for Rock Creek's defense. What are kind of their strengths there, and how do you keep the ball moving against a defense like that?
Their strength is obviously just in a run game. I mean, I think that's what they're really good at. I mean, I kind of mentioned before, and I could be wrong on that stat, but I think I remember that from the league meeting last year that they only gave up 1 rushing touchdown. I know they haven't given up a rushing touchdown this year, and so I think their run defense is very good, and so we've got to be able to do exactly what I just said. I want to keep them from doing. We need to put together, 10, 12, 13 play drives and just keep the ball, keep the ball moving and get some first downs and then be able to finish drives in the red zone once we get it there. And so, their defense is very solid. Their top 7 up front are they're physical and they fly to the football. And so we're going to have to be able to do that and then be able to find some passing situations and matchups that we like and be able to move the ball that way too.
Well, and last thing for your coach, I know we've touched on some of the offensive points, some of the defensive points, but overall, if you had to boil it down into your top couple of points here, what would you say are the biggest keys to the game to make it 3 wins in a row and to move to 3-1 on the season?
No penalties, no turnovers, and we can't miss tackles. I mean, I think it's just comes down to football. When it's a big game like this and you're playing a good opponent, it comes down to just some simple stuff. No penalties, no turnovers, and don't miss tackles.
Once again, that was Brad Nix, the head coach of the Abilene Cowboys, and Shane Sieben, head coach of the Rock Creek Mustangs. That game will be on Salina Post tonight or on the Salina Post YouTube page. Pre-game begins at 6:40 p.m. with kickoff scheduled for 7 o'clock. We'll step away. When we come back, we'll get you a full game preview of all 3 games you can tune in for broadcast coverage tonight. That conversation when we return. It's the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. It's brought to you by Kansas Wesleyan University.
And now back to the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview.
Back here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show, it's brought to you by Kansas Wesleyan, and it's time now for us to take a look at the 3 games that you can tune in for across our Salina Post Sports Network tonight. We got a good slate for you here, and we'll start with the Sacred Heart team coming off of their first victory of the season. They got it on Saturday, but they are going to have arguably their tallest task of the season as they take on a Valley Heights team that Devin Hanney made it to the 1A quarterfinal last year. They lost 55-22 to Conway Springs, the eventual 1A champs. They were 9-3 last year, and they won 32-16 over Sacred Heart last season, a score that honestly wasn't all that bad for a Knights team that only won 3 games in the regular season.
It will be good to be at home, right? I mean, that's something that they haven't had yet this year. That the game last Saturday in Council Grove was supposed to be a home game, but a neutral site with the traveling distance with Pleasanton. So it'll be good for the Knights to be at home here in Salina and play this game. And I'm so happy for them that they got that win. We talked about it last year, that game getting cut short due to weather, and they were ahead during that game. And then all of a sudden there's no result in that contest. They got kind of robbed out of a win a year ago. But yeah, just getting a win for Sacred Heart was big. Let's see if they can keep it rolling tonight.
Not for nothing, I do want to bring up their district, because that, I think, is something that a lot of people need to pay attention to, even if the Knights drop this game to Valley Heights. And I think they've got a decent chance to win. But if you start the year 1-3, all is not lost. That is a district that last year, remember, Sacred Heart played Republic County, 2 teams with losing records, for the right to host a home playoff game, because at the bottom you had a game between winless Bennington and winless Harrington for the right to go to the playoff. So the best days are ahead for this Sacred Heart team. They schedule tough early. They're going to have a chance to bounce back no matter what happens this week.
Sacred Heart, given the rough start, it's kind of hard to say this, or maybe for people to understand this, they could end up 4-4 or even 5-3. this may be the last game tonight. If they happen to lose this game, they might still end up at 5-3. So you're right. When we kind of teeter-totter in the second half of the season, keep your eye on Sacred Heart.
Elsewhere, we'll have our game of the week. You heard from both head coaches in our last segment. It's a game between Abilene and Rock Creek. Now, make no mistake about this. Rock Creek, they're favorites. I would say they're heavy favorites. Not only are they 3-0, they knocked off a 4A Wamego team that has made consistent pushes for state championships. They have dominated in their other two games. They won 51-0 against Bishop Ward in week 1, 68-0 against Bonner Springs in week 3. But if you're the Abilene Cowboys, what an opportunity on your home turf, 2-1. If you want to prove that you still belong in the upper echelon of 4A football, here you go.
In the NCKL, it's tough to say, and I heard this in preseason from a lot of coaches. Rock Creek is the favorite to win the NCKL this year. When you have Abilene, when you have Marysville, when you have Clay Center, when you have Wamego, that's kind of tough to process. But here we are. Rock Creek is one of 8 undefeated teams in Class 3A. Shane Sieben, you said it before, we've worked closely with him just with the games and the meetings they've had with Southeast of Saline over the past few years. He runs a program. It's not a good football team. It is a good program. And that Rock Creek Abilene game tonight will be fun to see how it develops.
One game that I think on paper has the potential to be really fun. It should be really fun, but we're not so sure. We'll see how it plays out. Southeast of Saline taking on Kingman. There's a lot of great history between these two teams. And Southeast, they wanted a tough opponent, ironically, to replace Rock Creek on their schedule. They said, hey, let's go out and get the team that took us out of the playoffs a few years back. Thought they were going to get a good game last year, but they won 40-6 in 2024. And this year it is 3-0 Southeast of Saline against 0-3 Kingman. What is kind of your pulse on this game?
Southeast of Saline is better than what I thought they would be. The first half against Beloit, Tyler, that was probably the best half of football I have recently seen them play. They were so good last week. The second half, however, was maybe the worst half of football I have seen their starters play. And we're talking about third quarter, but they had their first turnovers of the season. They had a fumble. They had an interception. They just weren't buckled up tight. This is a team that's still struggling with penalties as well. Just some uncharacteristic penalties. They were down inside the red zone, 1st and 10. All of a sudden, it's 1st and 33. And they were unable to overcome that and had a turnover on downs that drive. So I think the main focus for Mitch Gebhardt and this team when we talk to him coming up here between 6:30 and 7 is we're not worried about the Eagles of Kingman. We are still trying to take care of ourselves and get ourselves where we need to be before we start worrying about the opponent. And I think that's probably the message tonight. I still look for Southeast of Saline to win on their home field, just the second time that we've been there this year. But this will be a fun game to watch. This Kingman team, as I said, a lot of skilled players coming back, and they had the injury bug last year when Southeast went out there and kind of embarrassed them. I guarantee Kingman hasn't forgot about that. They are very well coached.
This is our Friday night preview, but we also want to give you a little preview of what you can tune in for on Saturday night as the Kansas Wesleyan Coyotes look to continue their hot start. Boy, Matt Middleton has had this team rolling. They have handled their business. They are 4-0. Just want to put some numbers to that as well in case people don't realize how good Kansas Wesleyan's been this year. They're averaging 400 yards of total offense a game. That's split almost right down the middle between running and passing. They have also split their touchdowns dealt relatively evenly between the rush and the pass. But where they've excelled has been on defense. You look at the numbers there. They're giving up 7.5 points per game. They're allowing under 60 rushing yards per game. They've got 12 sacks in 4 games, and they have allowed just 1 touchdown in each week, weeks 1 through 4. Likely favored again against Tabor here this week. It's going to be a tougher game than what they've had, and then the real test comes down in Springfield a week from now against the Evangel Valor. But I must say, for a program that we really didn't have a read on coming into the season, K-Dub has impressed me with what they've been able to get done.
It's fun to go out and be 1-0 every week, isn't it?
It really is.
Take a phrase from Mitch Gebhardt in Southeast of Saline. It is. We talked about it last week, Tyler. 2 weeks ago, we talked about it. It is a pleasant surprise. We just didn't know with this Coyote football team, with all the turnover that they've had. Anytime you bring in a new coaching staff, you hope, you pray things will be better than what the place that you came from. And Coach Middleton, his staff, these players, they have really taken seriously what it means to play Kansas Wesleyan football. And I think people now are starting to talk a little bit about the Coyotes on a national level.
They certainly are, and they certainly have. So Just a reminder, 3 great broadcasts coming your way here tonight at 7 o'clock with pregame at 6:40. You can catch the game of the week between Abilene and Rock Creek. You can also catch Sacred Heart as they return home for the first time this season to take on Valley Heights. Both of those games can be found on Salina Post or on our Salina Post YouTube page. Coming up right after this on KINA, we will launch into the pregame show for Southeast of Saline as they prepare to take on Kingman. That game will also be on our Salina Post YouTube page and on Salina Post. And then don't forget on Saturday, it's a 6 o'clock kickoff. It is a 5 o'clock pregame show right here on KINA. You can tune in as the Kansas Wesleyan Coyotes look to make it 5-0 as they play host to the Tabor Blue Jays on Family Weekend. That'll do it for us. One last time for Tyler Henry, for Devin Hanney. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. You got it right here on KINA, courtesy of the good folks at Kansas Wesleyan.